Hi everyone, today we're going to study a game that was very hard for me not to select because it features a very aesthetic position at a certain point. But besides that, this is a very nice game that can teach us a lot about positional chess. So here we're gonna learn many ideas, including the importance of a good pawn structure, why having a space advantage matters, how to maneuver your pieces slowly, and how to play on both sides of the board. And in the game we have Jose Raul Capablanca playing as white against Karel Treibal, who was a very strong amateur. And starting game plays by very strong players against not that strong players very often leads to a game where we can see the ideas more clearly because we normally get more mistakes or inaccuracies. So without further ado, let's get started. Here Capablanca played the move d4, and after d5 and c4, black played the move c6, we get a slap defense. And here Capablanca played knight to f3, black replied with e6, which is a very common move in the position. Knight to f6 is also very common. Just want to mention, for those of you who are not very familiar with this position, that taking on c4 is possible, but why we normally get the pawn back, for example by going e3, attacking this pawn. If black tries to defend it with bishop to e6, white can try attacking the pawn further, for example with knight b to d2, or if black tries to defend the pawn with another pawn by going b5. First of all, white already gets a central pawn majority, so 2 pawns against 1 pawn on the center. But more importantly, white can get the pawn back by going a4. This is a very typical idea to counterattack the pawn on b5. And here playing a6 wouldn't add another defender to the b5 pawn. For example, after a6 and pawn takes, black always has to capture with the c pawn, because after taking with the a pawn, white will simply get a rook for free. So after a4, black might continue with another move, for example e6, planning to develop the bishop on f8, but here white can get the pawn back after taking b5 and then going b3. So now these pawns are going to fall, for example after pawn takes, white would capture with the bishop giving a check, and then this pawn on b3 would fall, and white would get a slight advantage in these positions. So after knight to f3, e6 or knight to f6 is more logical, not trying to grab a pawn at any cost, but trying to develop. And here Capablanca played an uncommon move, but still quite logical. Maybe he wanted to avoid going for a theoretical discussion against a less experienced opponent. He just wanted to outplay him over the board, and not by preparing a sharp line. So here Capablanca played the move bishop to g5. Here white has many options, for example e3, queen to c2, knight to c3, all of them are possible, but bishop to g5 was played, and here black replied with the move bishop to e7, knight to f6 was an alternative, f6 might be playable, but I would not suggest it because after the bishop retreats, for example to d2, now this f6 pawn is annoying black's knight on g8 to develop. So after bishop to g5, black played bishop to e7, and here Capablanca traded bishops, and after queen takes, here again white has many options like e3, knight to c3 might also be an idea, but Capablanca played the move knight b to d2. And here black made the first inaccuracy in my view, which is the move f5. Instead black could have played a developing move like knight to f6, but here after f5 we see that black is fixing a lot of pawns on the light squares, and this setup might be common in some openings like the stone wall attack, for example. But in this particular position, black has already traded the dark square bishop, so black is creating some weaknesses. For example, the e5 square is already a weak square that one might try to exploit later on. So here the game continued e3, knight to d7, bishop to d3. We see how white's bishop can move freely as opposed to the bishop on c8. And here black played the move knight to h6, which might look a bit weird, but it makes sense because the knight wants to go to f7 and then cover the e5 square. So here both sides castled, and after queen to c2, g6. Here Capablanca played the move rook a to b1, which might look a bit strange, but the idea is to push b4 and gain space on the queen side, which will be a very important idea in this game. And here after knight to f6, now Capablanca played the move knight to e5, and after knight to f7, white continued with the move f4, reinforcing the knight on e5, and here black continued with bishop to d7, but I want to discuss the general idea of trading on e5, so here after knight takes, white can capture with any pawn, for example the d pawn, and now black has to make a decision the natural continuation here would be to go with the knight to e4. And here white has many options, but one simple positional idea that I found very interesting in these positions is to take with the bishop, and then after pawn takes, for example, f takes e4. Now white might try the idea of going knight to b3, and then after a move like bishop to d7, white can play the move c5. And now this knight is going to come to d4 later on, and we see how the knight on d4 is going to have a lot of potential to attack black's pawns, where the bishop on d7, it doesn't seem to have a bright future. It might go to e8, but it's still very passive. So here white has a very good knight against a bad bishop. So that's why here black tried bishop to d7, and now white played knight d to f3. So we see that developing the knight to d2 had this additional idea of bringing the knight to f3. And here black played rook f to d8. There was an interesting idea for black to try to equalize this position, which is by going c5, just trying to get a bit more active. So this was quite an interesting try. But this is a main factor in the game. Black, who is a weaker opponent, is kind of waiting the whole game, and as we'll see, this is normally not a good strategy when you play against a stronger opponent. So here after rook f to d8, now Capablanca started gaining space on the queen side with b4, and here again black played a waiting move, went bishop to e8. It was a bit more interesting to capture on c4, but white still gets a better position there. But after bishop to e8, here Capablanca could have gone c5 straight away, but instead delayed this idea first by going rook f to c1, and after a6, queen to f2. This queen might have ideas to go to h4, but white also had many other options. The position is fairly closed, so in these positions it is more about maneuvering. The positions tend to be quite flexible, and now black traded on e5 by going knight takes e5, and after knight takes, here black tried knight to d7. Again, if black goes to e4, white always has this interesting idea of taking the knight. And then after d takes e4, for example, we get this very strong knight against this very bad bishop on e8. So here black tried knight to d7, trying to trade the very strong knight on e5, and here Capablanca played a very instructive move and went knight to f3. So we see that white already has some space advantage, and we see how black's pieces are a bit clumsy. This bishop and knight are not coordinating very well. That's why this side having more advantage doesn't want to allow the other side to get rid of his bad pieces. So here the game continued rook d to c8, and now white played c5, and after knight to f6, a4. Now white has ideas to open up the position on the queen side by going b5, but again this is a closed position and white doesn't need to rush with such plans, but in any case a4 already prepares this idea. And after knight to g4, queen to e1, knight to h6, here white played the move h3, and we see again how white is the one having clear plans. g4 might be an idea later on, whereas black is just sitting and waiting. So here black tried knight to f7, maybe to cover the e5 square, but now white played the move g4, and here black waited by going bishop to d7. Trading pawns here would help white because now white gets the h-file to try to attack black's pawns. King to g2 might be an idea later on to bring some pieces to the h-file. So bishop to d7 was played, and now white continued with rook to c2, and after king to h8, rook to g2, trying to get some activity on the king side, and after rook to g8, here Capablanca played the move g5, gaining more space. Trading pawns here is not particularly strong. Again, white wants to keep this space advantage. Here black might even try to take with the e-pawn. Now black might even have ideas to attack the pawn on e3, and if white plays something like knight to e5, black can simply trade, and even though white gets a passed pawn, black can easily block it, for example with bishop to e6, and I'm not even sure if white keeps his advantage in this position. So g5 is a very strong move. Now white will have ideas to push the h-pawn, and after queen to d8, h4, king to g7, and h5, here again black correctly tried to hold the position. Trading in this particular position is not strong because, first of all, black can easily get the pawn back by going queen to h4, and then after taking on h5, white will have ideas to attack the pawn h7, which is isolated and fairly weak. So after rook to h8, white continued with rook to h2, and after queen to c7 and queen to c3, black played queen to d8. Black doesn't have a clear plan here, and after king to f2, queen to c7, white doubled on the h-file, and after rook a to g8, queen to a1. White is also maneuvering with the queen. Here black played rook to b8. And here white played queen to a3. White is maneuvering with the queen. One idea might be to keep the queen on the a file after white opens the position on the queen side. So after queen to a3, black played rook g to b8. And this queen to a3 also has a very subtle idea, which is to eye this diagonal. Because after black's move here, Capablanca played the move b5. Already making a strong decision, trying to open lines on the queen side. So here black captured on b5. If black doesn't capture on b5, here, for example, after waiting move like bishop to c8, because taking on a6 was a threat, now in this particular position white can trade, or even first played h6, and then after king to f8, now that these rooks are stuck on the king side, now white can open the queen side and then try to invade, for example bringing a rook to b6, and we see that now white gets targets on the queen side, so this position is already very good for white. That's why black captured on b5, and after pawn takes, here Capablanca first played the move h6, and after king to f8, so now white decided to close the position on the king side, because the a file is gonna get opened on the queen side. And after pawn takes, here black cannot capture on b5 without losing material, because after pawn takes, c6 creates a discover check and an attack on the bishop on d7, so white is winning material here. That's why black decided to play king to e7, and now white played the move b6, and here we get this very aesthetic position where white's pawns create a V. So let me know if this is the V of victory or what do you see here, but this is just a very nice dominating pawn structure that white gets. And after queen to b8, rook to a1, this is a very important point that white decided to close the position because white will gain full control of the a file, and with that the ability to attack this pawn on b7. So here black played rook to c8. If black tries to challenge the a file, one simple idea is to go queen to c3, attacking the queen, and the queen has to stay on the 8th rank. For example, after queen to b8, rook to a7, and then brings the other rook to the a file, which is a very similar idea that we'll see in the game. So after rook to a1, black played rook to c8, and now white went queen to b4. The idea is to bring a rook on a7, not a queen, again without allowing black to trade queens. So after rook h to d8, rook to a7, king to f8, white brought the other rook to the king side, and then brought the rook to a4, with the idea to bring the queen to a3 to triple on the a file. So here after king to f8, queen to a3, now it's a matter of finding the killing blow, which again Capablanca didn't rush. So after king to g8, first play king to g3, bishop to d7, king to h4. The king can go actually anywhere because black has no way to attack it, but this is also probably a waiting move in order to gain some time on the clock. But after king to h8, queen to a1, again white is maneuvering, king to g3, king to g2, and here finally white found the winning plan, which is to attack the pawn on b7 with a knight on a5. So the knight will come to d2, b3, and then a5. So here black kept on waiting with bishop to d7. Black cannot defend the pawn with a knight on d8. For example, after rook to d7, planning to go knight to d8 and overprotect the pawn on b7, because after rook to a8, we see how this queen is trapped. So again, we see another problem of lacking space. Your pieces can get trapped. So here black tried bishop to d7, and after knight to b3, rook to e8, knight to a5. Here black played the move knight to d8, trying to protect the pawn on b7, but here Capablanca found a very nice move to finish the game and went bishop to a6. So here white gets the V of victory, plus all of the other pieces besides the king on the a file. So this is again a very nice position. And here black captured the bishop, otherwise white would capture on b7. And here white is not even sacrificing material because white captured the bishop on b7. But I just want to mention that even in this position, white's advantage is so large that he could have even captured the pawn on a6, and this passed pawn is now very strong. So even in this position, white still gets a very large advantage. So white might have ideas to go b7 and rook to e8, or after a move like knight to b7, white can simply trade and then go rook to a7, and white is winning material. But in any case, it was much simpler than that, because after bishop to a6 and pawn takes a6, here Capablanca got the piece back, Now this rook is just very reactive, attacking the pawn h7. This pawn a6 is also very weak and is going to fall. So here black tried rook to e7, but here Capablanca found a very simple combination, but still very nice. After rook takes and rook takes, knight takes. We see how this knight is forking all the black pieces. So here black resigned because after the queen moves, white can simply capture, get the exchange back, and now this pawn is going to fall, and these two pawns are just very strong pass pawns. So I hope that you enjoyed this game. Remember, never let your opponent gain a space advantage for free, and don't sit and wait when you play against stronger opponents, because this will most likely lead to a defeat. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.